What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What If You Could. And today I have my sparkling friend here who I adore, who's one of the kindest people I know, Diamond Dave Kantor. So, hi, you, Dave.
Hey Gary, how are you?
I am sensational. We're going to have some fun, and I'm sure we're going to educate some folks on one of the most glamorous little gems there are on the planet. But first, I just want to introduce you to everybody. So I'm just going to fire off your bio.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So Diamond Dave is a fourth generation diamond importer, designer, and manufacturer. Growing up in his dad's 22 store chain, he learned all aspects of the diamond business. Luckily, Dave became the buyer for that company 2 years before his dad sold out to one of the big guys. Dave literally went from buyer of a 22 store chain with over 400 employees to selling diamonds out of the trunk of his car. I don't even know if that's legal in like 37 states. But with the family connections and amazing product knowledge, Dave's built his business into a wholesale company with 3 locations and a production office in Los Angeles. And we know everyone loves diamonds. So welcome, Diamond Dave. Thank you for popping on here.
Well, thanks for having me. Anything that Gary asks for, Diamond Dave does. So I'm happy to do it.
I'll tell you, you've been so good to our family, but I do just have like one opening question. I mean, you're a fourth generation diamond guy, right? So that
Yep.
goes back. How did your family originally get into the diamond business, and how long ago did it start?
Well, it started, my great-grandfather had a little diamond and watch repair shop up in Canada, where my dad's from. And like a lot of people, my heritage is Ashkenazi Jew, Eastern European Jew. Although if you went to the temples in Palm Desert or Scottsdale, they'd go, Dave, who? Because I'm not a real pious guy. I guess I'm not a real religious guy, but faithful guy. But anyway, a lot of the Jews escaping Russia and Austria and Germany, that's the only way they could move wealth, is so diamonds. And so my great grandfather emigrated to Canada and set up a little shop. And then my great uncle Mitch went to work for him and learned the business from him. And Uncle Mitch ended up having 8 stores up in Canada. And then my dad went to work for Uncle Mitch, learned the business from Uncle Mitch. My dad came down to the States to marry my mom and ended up buying a little store in downtown Tacoma. It was totally by accident. I guess we have time. I'll tell you the story the quickest I can. And so my grandfather in Seattle was a very prominent attorney, and my dad moved to Seattle, married my mom, and was unemployed. And one of my grandpa's clients had a little jewelry store in Tacoma, and the husband sadly passed away. So she reached out to her lawyer and said, what do I do? And he goes, well, my son-in-law has a lot of jewelry experience and he's living in my basement and he's not working. So I'll send him down and he can work for you. And so my dad at 24 was working for this lady. And after 6 months, she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want you to buy the business. And of course, my dad couldn't buy the business, but my grandfather, being a successful attorney, was able to put the money together, help my dad buy the business. And my dad grew it from one little tiny downtown Tacoma store to 22 stores, every mall in Washington State, and then 2 in Oregon. He built it to. So
Wow. So why wouldn't you go to work for Uncle Mitch? Go to work for Uncle Mitch. You'll learn the business. I love it.
yep,
I love
Yeah.
it. And then as as fate would have it, right? I mean, that's the beauty of so many of these podcasts that I do. It's like there's always some little turn of fate, where someone, your grandfather, this lady reached out, said, what do I do at this place? Yada yada. The next thing you know, your dad's got 22 stores, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's I love how that turn of fate works.
Yeah, and taking nothing away from my dad, he's a super smart guy. And knock wood, he's a healthy 85. Um, and taking nothing away from his business acumen, but he was at the right place at the right time because that's when malls started opening. Back then, there was only 2 or 3 jewelers per mall. Now, 80% of the stores are jewelry stores. But back then, you know, when a mall would open, they would reach out to him and say, "Hey, I know you have a successful store here. Would you like to open here?" And back then, there were regional players. In Washington, it was Weisfield's, Friedlander's. My dad's was Allen's and Ringmakers, and then Ben Bridge was all based in Seattle. Excuse me. And when they expanded the Tacoma Mall, this is how small the business was. The mall owners, my dad said, "I want to be in Tacoma Mall." And the mall owner said, "Well, you have to talk to the Bridges and get permission because we don't want another jeweler unless they say it's okay." My dad called Herb Bridge and said, "Hey, any chance?" And Herb was very gracious and said, "Hey, I hear you're an up and coming kid. We love competition. Come on in." And they were actually very friendly competitors. Um, and so it just was a really good time to be in the retail jewelry business, right? When malls were expanding. So we had a store in every mall in Washington State. So that's why it made us a very attractive buy opportunity because K's, who ended up buying my dad, they had no stores in Washington State. And so they could instantly be in every single mall in Washington by buying them out. So,
Yeah. And we know that every kiss begins with K.
well, I don't think so anymore, but I love K's because they allowed my dad to retire at 49 and move to Newport Beach, and he's never had to work since. So God
Yeah,
bless him, right?
screw K's. We don't even like K's.
No, we
We
don't
only
like
do
K's.
business with Diamond Dave.
There you
And
go.
I have to say, as sure, it was fortuitous that that fell on your lap, but no one no one goes from a little store to 22 stores and 400 employees by accident. So obviously your father had a lot of business acumen. Obviously he had some drive. He could have
Oh
stayed
yeah.
with that one little store forever, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, is
No,
that
very
now?
hardworking guy, very smart guy.
Yeah.
So yeah,
How
but
long?
nothing
How
but
long
respect for
after? How
him.
long after his first store were you born and you came along?
So I was born, he already had that store. He had it for 2 years. And then I was born. So I have an older sister. So he got it right about the time she was born. Um, tell you how old I am, Gary. I can still remember my dad clearing out a window and putting my sister and I in the window to watch the holiday parade go by in downtown Tacoma. I can remember it,
That's awesome.
But it's funny. I have a younger brother who's 5.5 years younger, and we always joke that Michelle and I were born when Dad had one store, but Jay was born when Dad had 7 stores, and Jay grew up a little differently than we did. So
Yeah, he didn't have to eat a lot of gefilte fish and matzah. He
that's
got the
right.
good stuff, right?
That's right.
He got the
That's
good
right.
stuff. And it's funny because my father had a drugstore fall on his lap, and then
Okay.
eventually it fell on his head because my dad had no business
Oh
acumen at all.
no. Oh
But
no.
I grew up, I mean, geez, I remember being I mean, like my first memories of working in the drugstore, stocking stuff. I started working the register at 8 years old. I mean, so there's something special about growing up in a family business, right?
Yeah.
There's something
Yeah.
really special about it.
Yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. So
And
were you nipping at your dad's heels right out the gate? Were you hanging around the store? Did you not want to come in and work?
well, it was really funny. So when I was 13, you start thinking about cars. I know you don't get one for another 3 years, but you start thinking about it. And I said to my dad, he was doing really well by that time and introduced me to, I had never seen a BMW before. He bought the first BMW in Western Washington. And I said, "Hey, so what kind of car are you going to get me when I turn 16? He said, "I'm buying you a car." I said, what are you talking about? You have 22 stores. He goes, I can give you a job and you can earn money and I'll match it. And I went, oh, okay. So at age 13, I was the scrub. I cleaned up after the goldsmiths. I did shipping, every scrub job in that company. And I didn't get to work in a store. So I worked in the head office. I didn't get to work in a store till I was 15. And I was so excited. By that time, I kind of had the drive. I was kind of getting into it. And I got to put on a suit and a tie. And they said, don't you dare leave this watch counter. I'm like, what? No, I want to show diamonds. Like, no, you got to show Citizen and Seiko watches, and don't you dare leave this counter. And so I didn't get to sell diamonds until I was about 17. But by that time, I was really kind of getting into it. So I would work after school, after high school and summers. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. But the funny thing to me, well, it wasn't funny at the time, but I always tell people my dad Miyagi'd me, meaning he never let me play owner's son, which I was very resentful of at the time, because my good friend growing up, his dad had a bunch of car dealerships, and John was a sales manager when he was 16, which didn't work out so good. But anyway,
Right.
I was just like, I don't get it. I don't like, this is not cool. And he taught me every aspect of the business. And to tell you how I don't want to say tough, because he's not a real tough guy, but I was working during college, a store about an hour away from where I went to school. And I was working Friday afternoon. So I'd leave school at 1 o'clock, drive an hour, work the Silverdale Mall Friday night, which Friday is hit and miss in retail, or was anyway. Saturday is a really good day. And then Sunday, which is one of the worst days for jewelry. And I was the number one salesperson in the store, working the worst day, Saturday, which is the best day, and part of Friday. So the manager takes me up. And so back then they take you to the bench if you were in trouble. You know, the benches in the wall, right? So Diane takes me out to the bench and she goes, I got a problem. I said, well, what's the problem? And she goes, well, everybody's mad at you. I said, oh, well, I didn't know that. Nobody's expressed that to me. Yeah, they're mad at you. And again, to tell you how old I am, this is back in the days when people sit in the back of the store and smoke cigarettes and drink coffee, right? And she said, well, you're the number one salesperson in the store, and they're really resentful of this. And I said, well, Diane, I stand on the carpet line. I stand right where the carpet meets the mall. I want to greet the clients. I'm here to sell people. I'm here to help them. And she goes, well, you need to sit in the back and wait till everybody's busy. And then if there's another customer, then you can go help them. So well, I don't agree with that. And again, I keep dropping my age here, but I went to the payphone. Okay. And I called my dad and I said, hey, this is BS. I said, I'm the number one salesperson by a mile. And I'm working Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm working 2 of the worst days. Friday could be okay. And then Saturday. And I said, I don't understand. You know, everybody's going to sit in the back and be lazy. I'm here to work. And my dad said, what did you say to me? I said, when I told him the story again, he goes, do you think any other part-time weekend salespeople call me at home and complain about their manager? And I went, maybe not. And he goes, if you can't work it out with your manager, Diane, then there's a district manager for that region. And then there's a general manager. He goes, but it's never going to get to me. And I said, oh, he goes, so you go figure it out. And I said, okay, I'll see you at dinner. Love you. Bye. Like, what? So I went, and for the next 2 months,
you were 17?
No, then by that time I was 19.
19. Okay.
19. Okay. And so
but still, I mean, that's really young. On Friday and Saturday nights, most 19-year-olds are not thinking about working harder and doing better and wanting to earn more money. They're out partying. I mean, they're I don't know, remember, I think you and I are about the same age. We're thinking about Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill, and chasing girls, right? So
by that time I was really into what I was doing. I was really, really amped about it.
But your dad was not giving it up, man. He was keeping your feet to the fire no matter what.
Yeah. And looking back now, I couldn't do what I've done without him really teaching me a work ethic, right? If I was owner's son and got a car when I turned 16, and he gave me a store to manage. Like it wouldn't have worked out very well. So, in hindsight, it was really helpful. But the end of that story is, so I sat on my hands for 2 months. I drive out there and sit there. I do my homework from college, call my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and
Awesome.
and my dad called the manager and said, sales are down 40%. You get him back on the floor now. So it all worked out well, but
But I've got to ask about that, because did anyone, because now if you go to the mall, right, you've got the carpet guys, you've got the people, waving you in, hey, come check this out. But obviously other people weren't doing that. Did someone teach you that, or did you just instinctively know, if I'm out front, I'll probably meet more people?
that was just me. I don't like sitting around. I don't like being bored. I need to be active. And so I thought, well, at the very least, I'm going to say hi to people on their lunch break. Oh, that's the guy from the shoe store. Hey, man, how's it going? Or, just I'd rather do that than sit in the back. And I never smoked cigarettes, and everybody was smoking in the back. I'm like, I don't want to be around all this. So I wanted to stand out there, of course, to be helpful to customers coming in, and just to see what was going on.
Yeah. Did you, how late in life did you get the Diamond Dave moniker?
Well, that started when I was about 15, because again, as you know, Van Halen was huge when we were growing up. And I was a huge Van Halen fan, like huge. And I saw them at the University of Puget Sound Fieldhouse, where I went to college. But this is way before I went to college. Their very first tour, it was a 3,000 person arena, and I saw them. I was a huge fan. And so all my friends knew that, like, if they're going to be with me, they're going to hear Van Halen. So they just, Diamond Dave, it was David Lee Roth was Diamond Dave. And so everybody's like, oh, he's in the diamond business. He loves Van Halen. So my friends started calling me Diamond Dave. And when I first started my own business, I was only 24, 25. So I wanted to be David Kantor, and I wanted to be very serious, so people took me seriously. And all my friends are Diamond Dave. And I said, you know what? My friends call me this. I really want to be friends with my clients in a genuine way. I'm just gonna be who I am, what everybody calls me, Diamond Dave. But it's funny. One of the first guys to start calling me that, he has a home in the Hideaway in the desert, and so he sees me on TV, hears me on the radio. He'll call me like once a quarter. He's like, "Where's my residual? I trademarked that for you. Every time you use it, I want to check." I'm like, "Well, you live in the Hideaway, so I think you're doing okay. I don't think you need a check from me, so it's okay."
You completely took the words out of my mouth. I'm like, dude, you live at the Hideaway. All right. If anything, you should be buying diamonds from Dave in bulk every month. All right.
Yep, exactly. Well, he's actually pretty good. He's actually a pretty good client too.
Screw your residuals, buddy.
Right.
But what you said and means a lot to me about you being real and you being genuine and friendly. I don't remember how I walked into your office that one day. It might have been from a commercial. But my wife had just passed away, and here I am getting engaged to some gal 4 months later. Complete madness, right? Everyone was mad at me. So anyways, I stumble in and to chat with you, and you are the kindest, most genuine person. I'm like, this is not how sellers of stuff are, right? You know what I mean? It was like, I immediate was like, I love this guy. I wish I had 10 million bucks. I'd buy the biggest ass diamond I could buy, right? But you were so kind and so genuine. And so in the interim, I bought the diamond for that engagement that never turned into a wedding. I ended up getting the diamond to the woman I'm married to now. You've took care of my first son, and you took care of my second son, and neither one of them had any money, right? But you made them feel like bigwigs. You made them feel so good, and I can't emphasize that enough. So yes, you are a true guy. I kind of jumped out of line. I guess maybe I should have finished with that. I don't know, but it's true that you're so genuine and kind. You make everyone feel comfortable no matter what their budget, and I really, I appreciate that.
Well, that's really nice of you to say. And I was honored to take care of every Scot that was sent my way. It's for a short time there when I was working for my dad. So when I left the stores and went to the head office to be the buyer, then you're kind of in a different side of things. You're working with the guys overseas, you're learning production and all that. And then when I was, thrust back out on my own, I realized I was not in the diamond business, but in the special occasion business. And, we do it day in and day out. Gratefully, we do it for hundreds of people a month. But it's never lost on me that this is somebody's engagement. This is their wedding. This is their anniversary. This is their birthday. This is their Valentine's, Mother's Day, Christmas. And I know this is going to sound super cheesy, but it's really a genuine honor to be a part of these things. Like, I mean, I get texts literally from all over the world. Dude, she said, yes, bro, you hooked it up. Man, I couldn't have done it without you. I'm like, wait, didn't you say you're proposing in Greece? Yeah, we're here right now. I'm like, what are you texting me for? Like, get back to your bride. But it really, I honestly, I become friends with a lot of my clients. We get invited to weddings. We're going to a wedding in Miami this month. And it's just, I've met so many fascinating people. Of course, I'm so grateful to have artists and athletes and, those kind of people. But we also have a thing in our offices called the Wall of Fame.
Yep.
And they're not famous people. They're our clients. And people walk in and they go, wow, you're like in a really happy business. And
Yeah.
it just reminds me, how grateful I am to be part of these things. It's a special moment in people's lives. And no matter how big we get, it's just an honor. My wife always jokes. She's like, who's you texting at 5 a.m? Like, what? I'm like, it's a client in North Carolina. It's not 5 a.m. in North Carolina,
Yeah.
And he feels like he can reach out to me. And I mean, people have my personal cell. If we're working on a project, you're going to have my personal cell. If it gets to a service issue or a warranty issue or something like that, I'm not going to personally take care of it, but I'm going to make sure that my team takes care of it for them. So it just, I mean, I am in business. Yeah, we love selling diamonds, but it's really a special business. It's really something special.
Well, I was gonna, you took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna mention the Wall of Fame. I was gonna say you literally had to take down some Van Halen posters to put up to put up these pictures, but they're beautiful. And yes, if you go into like restaurants where famous people eat or other diamond places, they're pimping out, Shaq bought this or that or whatever. They're pimping it out, but you're not. I mean, you walk in there and it is just people like me, with their other person showing their ring, where they are, when they propose. It's really amazing. The freaking wall is packed. I don't know if you have to move them around, but it's true. I mean, when we were dealing with Zachy, is in the Air Force. He had no budget, and he just was like, Dad, I don't really want to bother Dave. I don't have, and he left feeling like a king. And his
Love that.
future wife or his current wife just loved what you did.
That makes me feel good.
And again, I just, I know you deal with some really high-end stuff, but you make us little people feel good. And I'll tell you what, that's really a gift. I didn't know you were blowing out 100 rings a month.
Yeah, we're pretty busy and gratefully so. We produce most of our own stuff, so we have a little bit more control over it. And so, most people understand it's 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, I have guys pinging me now like, hey, I want something at the end of November. Is that enough time? I'm like, I get people asking me something for 4 days, right? So we're lucky we can move things around, but we've got really talented production guys. That's the only thing about jewelry I didn't learn is goldsmithing. I really didn't have an interest in it. takes a real special hand-eye coordination. And we had a goldsmith in every store in my dad's business. And so I would visit with the goldsmiths and I'd watch them. The, the only time I sized a ring, we probably lost money because it was, the malls are open till 9, right? So the goldsmiths would leave at 5 or 6 or whatever. And we had 3 people between the time the goldsmith left and the time closing that said, hey, I'll buy a ring right now if you can size it because we're not from around here. And we had to say, no, we can't do it. And it was probably 45 minutes to closing. I turned to the other salesman. I said, look, somebody else comes in here and asks for a ring size. I'm going to go in that goldsmith office. I'm going to do it. Somebody comes in like, hey, we'll buy a ring right now if you can get it done. I'm like, come back in a half hour. Go get an orange Julius. I must have melted a half a pound of gold on that thing once I cut it, so that I made sure, like I'm grinding it down and I got the torch on it. The sizing job probably cost more than the ring was worth, but I knew pretty early on I wasn't a goldsmith. So I have really, really talented guys on my team, CAD designers, casting guys, setters, finishers. So
that's your can do, I will spirit. And a lot of that had to do with your dad just not letting you do things easy. And you're like, screw it. I'm not going to turn away another client. I'll get this sucker done regardless, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So they got an extra $800 worth of gold in that sizing job. So.
Now the diamonds, just to go back a little bit, I mean, people don't realize, gold, everyone thinks about gold, right? Because it's been around forever as such a precious metal. Diamonds also go back thousands of years, as a precious stone. And the thing that you said about your family when they immigrated to Canada was so true for thousands of years, right? When people didn't know how to transfer their wealth, right? They could take diamonds because they were so small and portable and travel with them, and that would be their wealth, right, when they got to the new place they were going. And so that's what your family did back in the day. They just sold what they had for diamonds. And
correct, and took them to Canada and started a little business. So, but that's how the diamond business in Israel came about. Everybody escaping World War II. So Antwerp, Belgium was, and still is, a very prime cutting center. But that area, people were able to go to Israel and take that skill. And so that's why Israel has a huge cutting center, just because those guys all escaped World War II or after World War II as well. So,
and that when we were in Amsterdam, I was amazed at how many Jewish people had, the diamond business through Amsterdam.
Yeah, it's pretty prominent there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I when you think of the diamonds, when you think about what a diamond goes through, I like to use the analogy of a diamond just for people about the pressure. The more pressure you're under, the better the stone.
Right.
It takes fire and pressure to make a diamond. But when now that you're so deep into this, and maybe your dad, because he had so many stores, were doing it. Do you go to mines? Have you ever been to the De Beers mine? Where do you, when do you come in the diamond process?
That's a great question. So I buy from the cutters. That's as close to the mine as I can get. And again, if my dad wasn't so big, when you have one little store or you open a store, there's no way you're going to get to talk to the guys that I was allowed to talk to. And a couple of guys that I thought were my friends became unfriends very quickly when they realized I didn't have a checkbook for a 22 store chain anymore. Like, wait, didn't we just go to Peter Luger's in the US Open in New York? I thought we were friends. Like, what are you doing now? Like, well, okay. But
when you're selling diamonds out of the trunk of your car, a lot of those connections go away, right? The big guys who love you at 22 stores maybe don't love you when you're in your trunk of your car, right?
3 of the biggest
that's horrible. Guys, that sucks.
Yeah, no, 3 of the biggest guys that I really thought we were friends wanted nothing to do with me. But there was enough guys, really huge guys, that were very fond of my dad. I had started a relationship with them as the buyer for my dad. And so those guys really helped me through in the beginning. and they didn't have to, but they did, and they were very gracious. And so there was about 5 guys that were long-standing family connections. They're just like, hey, Dave, whatever you need, like we'll figure it out. So
So you go, these guys that you now deal with, so they buy them from, say, De Beers, or they buy them from the mines. They go somewhere. What shape are the diamonds in? Are they actual diamonds, and then you can cut them down more, or are you just getting already finished diamonds?
So the cutters that I buy from, there's 2 levels. There's what's called a site holder. Site holders are approved by De Beers to buy from De Beers. So they get a few boxes a year. And De Beers usually designs it so that the cutter can make money. But sometimes they lose money on the box. And you can't say no. I think you're allowed to say no once a year, maybe twice a year. And you say more than that, De Beers is like, guess what? You're not a site holder anymore. But De Beers doesn't really have the stranglehold on the business like they used to. They used to control almost 95% of the business. They're probably at about 48% of the business now. So there's other ways that you can buy from mines, but you have to be very careful that you follow what's called the Kimberley process to make sure that they're not from conflict areas. They're not what's called blood diamonds, that you're making sure that the diamonds you're getting are conflict free. But the diamond crystals, they're very unimpressive when they're not cut. They just like kind of translucent rocks, if you would. And then it's up to the cutter to decide what can be done with this. How can do I take this and cleave it and make 2 diamonds from it? Do I make 1 long diamond? So they have to decide. And when you're a cutter and you're buying rough, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Like, I mean, these are big boys. And so the benefit that I have, and again, my dad retired in '89. So a lot of the guys that I work with now weren't even in business when my dad was in business. So from those connections, I've developed more connections. But what I do with the cutters is I trade my sorting skills for pick of the litter. So instead of having them do the work, which this is going to sound bad, but if I said, hey, Gary, I need you to pick me out 20 1-carat diamonds, and here's our price point that we're trying to hit, you may not pick the 20 best out of that parcel, right? You might try and put in some of the lower ones and try and make a little more money.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So what I do is I say, just send me the parcel, or I'll fly somewhere to meet you if you're flying into the States, and let me just sit down and sort. Put me in a room and let me do the work. And I'm willing to do the work. And then I get pick of the litter. They know if I'm going to do the work. I used to go to New York a lot because the guys from India who cut in India would bring diamonds into New York. And I would just say, when are you going to be there? And they would just lock me in a room with have an Indian guy just looking at me, even though we've known each other for 20 years. They're still having a guy watch me. I put on a little Van Halen. I'm like, we got to change that sitar music. I can't do the sitar music. I'm sorry. And I would sit there for 12 hours a day looking at diamonds. And in the other room, there's 30 guys from India sorting diamonds for retailers. But I'm like, no, I don't want what you sort. I want to pick them.
Wow.
And so that was another thing that I would do is I would get pick of the litter as long as I would grind it out for 3 days,
That's amazing. So that freaking just brings up a billion things in my brain. Okay, so I mean, originally, thousands of years ago, the diamonds really started in India, and then they moved to Brazil, and then they moved to South Africa, right? Some sort of progression like that. So the Indians, they're still big in the diamond business, India?
Well, they are big now. So when my dad was in business, we'd have guys calling on us from India, and they were very poorly cut diamonds. They really didn't know what they were doing. So we never bought from India when my dad was in business. They've really taken over. India is the biggest cutting center now, far surpassing Europe, far surpassing Israel. Mainly because, well, number one, now you can get beautiful stuff from there. They really know what they're doing. And number two, sadly, the labor market doesn't pay as well in India as it does in Israel or Europe. And so it's much cheaper to produce in India. And so I'd say, I mean, I still work with some Israeli guys. have a couple guys in Europe that I work with in Belgium. But most of my guys now are in India. So these are all connections I've kind of built on my own, just through a little of both, me reaching out to them and them finding me. So
Are the mines the majority of the mines still in South Africa though, and then the rough diamonds didn't go to India to the
uh,
cutters?
well, most of the natural diamonds that we see now are mined in Western African countries, not South Africa. They're not mined in India, but this probably is a little early in the conversation. But lab grown has taken off in India, and they're the biggest producers of lab grown diamonds. So they grow the diamonds, they grow the rough crystals, and then they cut them. So they're pretty vertically integrated in India with that aspect. So.
So now this is kind of a big deal. So you actually get, because of who you are and your time and the connections you've made, you get these guys, they allow you to go into this room with this box of diamonds, they dump it out, and you can go through these rough diamonds to pick what you think will be the best cut diamonds.
No, I'm sorting the diamonds that are already cut.
Okay. Oh,
So
okay.
they've already cut them.
And
And so
that
now
that means, and just for cut, because for laymen like me, I think of the old commercial. I think it was for a Lincoln Continental or something, where they got the
yeah.
guy in the back and it's the ride so smooth you could cut a diamond, right? So you think,
Uh-huh.
and then Saturday Night Live
Yeah.
made it into the Moil, right?
I wasn't going to bring it up, but I
No,
do
no,
remember that.
it's one of the greatest skits ever, where they got,
Yeah.
you hear the baby cry, "Wah!" you
Yeah.
know. It's just
Yeah.
the moil cutting is the best. But
Yeah.
so I think when lay people like myself think of diamond cutters, so are you thinking you get this rough stone? Your guy says, I think this will be better long, it'll be better short. I can get 6 diamonds out of this rock and not 4. And then they cut it, but it's still rough, right? When you're digging through it.
No, it's already fully cut.
Okay.
It would be the diamond the way you would see it if you were picking a diamond from
Okay,
me.
because when I went in there for the 4th time, I don't have 4 wives, but for my current wife, you said to me, I didn't know what the heck I wanted, but you said to me, you go, you know what? I know you want this size diamond, but I have a smaller diamond, but it is freaking gorgeous. And I've had it in my safe for a while. I just want to show it to you. I know it's a little smaller than you're thinking, but the diamond itself is unbelievable, right? So you brought out this diamond like in an emerald shape, and I'm like, holy crap, that's incredible. I mean, and you explained to me why the clarity and the purity and all that stuff. And then I remember, I'm squirreling here for a second, and I'll go back to that room because I had a lot of questions about that. But I remember when you sat down with my son, and he was probably, I don't know, 24, 25 at the time. He was young. And you took so much time with my son, Chris. You gave him the eye thingy, you walked him to the scale. I mean, you really took so much time explaining the process to him. That was beautiful. Anyways, I just want to get him. So going back to my original thought. So you go in this room, they dump these diamonds on a table, and you start picking the ones you want.
Well, by that time, they're usually in parcel papers. So if they're not certified already, meaning they've gone to an independent body and that body decides the color, the clarity, the cutting. If it hasn't gotten to that point, I've gone through the GI diamond grading program, and so I have the credentials to grade diamonds, to appraise diamonds. I don't do appraisals I do appraisals for my clients, but so I can look at a diamond and see if it's a really good value or not. Um, Sometimes when they're coming from India, they're already certified, and so I have to kind of pick based on the paper. But I never purchase a diamond based on the paper. I always need to get my eyes on it, and that's just my old school. I have so many clients that are so remote that the diamond looks good on paper, and they're like, "Great, here's my credit card." I'm like, "No, no, no. Let me pay to have it shipped in. Let me get my eyes on it, and I'll tell you if it's the right diamond." Now, most of the time it is, but I've had a few times where I've argued with clients. They're like, "Dave, no, that's the diamond I want. Here's my credit card." I'm like, "I'm not selling you this diamond. Like, it's not, you're not buying this diamond for me, because when you open that box, you're not going to be happy. Oh, I'll never know. Blah, blah. Like, you'll know, trust me.
Yeah.
But a lot of times if I can buy diamonds uncertified and then send them to the labs myself to get certified, it's almost like a little bit of a game for me. I'm like, hey, I think this is going to get an F color. He's selling it as an H color. I'm getting a bargain. And I'd say I have a pretty good track record. I've had a couple times where I'm like, wasn't expecting that great.
Didn't hit that one. Didn't hit
that happens sometimes. But for the most part, I'm pretty good at my grading and usually get what I'm looking for. So
I want to go back to the room, but now you just brought something else up that I didn't think about either. So I used to collect baseball cards before it was, when we put them in the spoke of our car, our bikes and stuff, and they made the sound and stuff. And then I started collecting, like, actually they'd be worth something. And then they started sending the baseball cards off to be graded by these different things and put them in cases and stuff. So there was more than one. So when you're talking about grading diamonds, is there just one, like, world international diamond grading place that every diamond's graded through, or are there multiple grading organizations?
That's a really good question. There's multiple grading companies. The granddaddy is GIA, Gemological Institute of America. They're the ones who came up with the grading system, DEF color, VVS, all that kind of thing. Sadly for them, they didn't trademark it. And so everybody uses that scale. So there's EGL, there's PGS, there's IGI, there's HRD, there's AGS. AGS actually has their own scale, but nobody understands it. The interesting thing is, if you're selling diamonds in Asia, all they know is GIA. So most of my clients out of the country that are in Asia, they only want GIA because it is the granddaddy. And in most people's mind, it's the non-questionable lab. Like, you would, if you were another diamond dealer and I said, hey, Gary, I've got this GIA, you wouldn't question the grade. I don't think that's the right way to go, even though that's where my credentials come from. I've seen it's all done, excuse me, by eye, right? There is a colorimeter which grades color. It's pretty accurate, but clarity and everything else is graded by the human eye. So there are errors to be made. And I've seen GIAs that I just went, there's no way this is graded properly. It's so overgraded. And excuse me, I've seen EGLs that are way undergraded. And so there's this misnomer that GIA is just the non-questionable and that EGL overgrades, and you have to see the diamond. You just have to see the diamond. I kind of tell people, it's kind of like getting in a classic car, right? And the guy tells you how it performs, but until you step on the gas, you don't really know how it performs.
No.
And to give you a quick story, I had a client a few years back. We settled on a beautiful diamond. It was about a $20,000 diamond. And he said, hey, everywhere else I looked, this was a $40,000 diamond. So I think I'm getting a good deal. He goes, but I got to think about it over the weekend. I said, yeah, whatever, do what you need to do. He calls me on Monday and said, look, I'm not questioning you or the diamond, but I heard that lab that diamond's certified by is not as accurate as GIA. And I said, well, that's the word on the street. He goes, I want you to find me that diamond in a GIA. I said, okay, well, the diamond I'm offering you is 20,000. I'm looking in our database. It's 28,000 in a GIA, just for the paper. And he goes, well, okay. And I said, he goes, that's still within my budget, because you're still way less than everybody else. I'd like to see that diamond. I said, no problem. I'll have it brought in. So he comes in and I lay the two diamonds in front of him and I go, okay, which is the 28,000 and which is the 20,000? He goes, well, what's the grade? I said, the grade's exactly the same on the paper. Which one's 28, which one's 20? He's like, well, you tell me. I said, I'm not telling you. You tell me. He goes, well, I don't see any difference. And I said, the defense rests. I'm like, look, man, I'm happy to sell you an $8,000 more expensive diamond. I'm happy to do it. I said, but why are you spending $8,000 more? You literally cannot see the difference. And he goes, yeah, you're right. He goes, but I had to see it for my own mind. I said, but it's not any prettier. It doesn't look any better. It just has a more valuable piece of paper that you're going to put in a drawer and never look at again. So,
thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe,
like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.